Welcome to Musings and Modalities. I'm your host, Tristen Stawicki. Think of me as your pragmatic shaman bestie. Join in with other high-vibe, lovely people as I unravel spiritual ideas to help create change and growth in your life. I cover a variety of spiritual topics, sharing knowledge to meet you wherever you are in your journey. As a shaman, astrologer, and human design reader, I help you understand how to make informed decisions and incorporate different modalities using discernment and your own intuition. Today, you will gain powerful shamanic healing tools you can use to incorporate spiritual practices in non-traditional ways. Whether you're just beginning or need a knowledgeable best friend with the next phase of your journey, I'm here to help. Stay tuned. Musings and Modalities starts now. I'm Tristen Stawicki, and for the next 30 minutes, we are diving into what is holding you back from the love you deserve. The cosmos gives us an abundance of information about ourselves and those we love. Not only do we all have our individual birth charts, but there are transits and retrogrades and other celestial events all working to help guide your love life. In this episode, I'll explain how I use birth charts to navigate relationships and why the time is now to take charge of receiving the love you deserve. With Venus fully direct, the energy around love and relationships has shifted. The post-shadow phase of this retrograde will continue for a few more weeks, and we can really use this time to integrate the lessons and experiences we've had with those closest to us since the retrograde began at the beginning of March, right? It's been several weeks. We've been in this energy for a while. And so now is really our time to wind down from the reflection and really start thinking about the action and even take action based on the reimagining we've done in this part of our life. Now is the time to make change, and I often find clients really struggle after a retrograde to understand how to move forward. Once the fog lifts, they are almost afraid to pick up momentum in that area of their life. So I wanted to talk today about how we can use the stars to guide your love life. And it's really all about using the tools and information available to us in your birth chart. And perhaps the chart of the person you're talking to, living with, casually seeing, or are committed to. Compatibility and couple readings are helpful at all stages of relationship. And a compatibility reading uses the birth charts of each of the people in a couple or a partnership. And it's really helpful as well for, business partnerships and roommates. And there are 3 reasons why these readings are helpful. First and foremost, they highlight you don't have to be similar, right? I know it's so fun when you're in a relationship to figure out all the ways you're the same. And sometimes there can be some tension when you find out the ways you're different. And so I really want to reinforce you don't have to be similar, but you do have to share the same values and be fundamentally aligned. Second reason why is compatibility readings highlight the areas of your relationship which may naturally have tension and which ones are smooth sailing. It's so much easier when you know how to navigate rough waters because you can anticipate it coming, right? That's why we love knowing when the weather's going to change, right? We're checking our weather apps, we're checking what's coming ahead. We use GPS everywhere. And so when you're able to understand traffic's up ahead or what have you, it really helps shift your mindset and you come at it with a different energy to really problem solve and work through it. And this could be a tension that shows up for a specific transit. This could be a tension that maybe showed up at the beginning of your relationship. You worked through it, and now 15 years later, it's coming up again because of a cycle and a celestial placement is coming through. And it's so helpful when you can reflect on the things you worked through in your relationship and the things that may be upcoming because you're just prepared for it. And it oftentimes is easier than you expect to work through because you just had that kind of foreshadowing, that warning ahead of time. And finally, and most importantly, you learn about yourself. Relationships are often an area where people struggle. It's a $10 billion industry for a reason, right? And learning how you show up in a relationship, how you need someone to show up for you is priceless and so, so helpful. So now I want to talk about what information in a birth chart really am I looking for? What am I looking at? First and foremost, I don't take any stock in looking at compatibility with just sun signs. right? I don't think looking at one element of an entire birth chart is helpful or provides any useful information. And for something as impactful as the relationships you have, especially romantic ones, we need to really dive deeper and look at more elements of the chart, specifically those around values, communication, and partnerships. So, as I mentioned in a reading, I'm looking at both birth charts. I'm looking at the personal planets, especially Mercury and Venus. And the reason why I'm checking Mercury is because Mercury is associated with the mind, communication, and intellect. It governs how we think and learn and communicate with others. Strong communication and harmony in that communication is so helpful and impactful in a relationship. Many couples naturally struggle with communicating, and it's normally because they have different styles that they have trouble articulating, right? There's almost a need to prove that their style is the right one. And so when you're openly talking through a couple's Mercury signs and you're discussing the gifts and shadows of that placement in a safe container of no judgment, just information, it really affects profoundly how they can work together without one style being right or wrong. It's really life-changing, just this one element of a chart. I've had several cases of couples that have, been together many years, and several of them were married. And in a 90-minute session, we were able to completely alter kind of the friction they had with communication. Because the validation to know that your tendencies aren't personal failings is just beyond, right? It's just so refreshing to know that. And for yourself, you can really think about in your life where relationships have perhaps fallen apart or you've made the decision to leave, and how communication really impacted that choice or, really the overall experience of that relationship. I'm also spending time reviewing and sitting with the energy of Venus. So, Venus plays a pivotal role in our relationships with others. It guides our interactions. It fosters harmony and empathy and understanding. This planet really encourages us to seek connection and to strengthen our values. It teaches us the value of compromise and cooperation. And it's really through this Venusian energy that we experience that joy of connection, the pleasure of sensuality, and the inspiration of artistic expression. And so I asked you to sit with the question of, do you know how to receive? And really just sit with that for a second. Do you know how to receive, whether that is love or gifts or an act of kindness? Because many of my clients have really shared that they struggle to trust and receive love or, an expression of love. And it's really fascinating and so beautiful, honestly, the transformation that people experience when they recognize that the way they've tried to express their love because of how they've seen it expressed in movies or television, or maybe, what their partner kind of expects to happen, is not authentic to who they are and how they want to express it. And really, you can feel, anyone can really feel when something is disingenuous, even if the intentions are good, right? And connecting with my own Venus placement really helped me learn that one of my highest expressions of love is to plan. It's not very romantic, but it is to plan a long-term future with someone, right? It's showing up for someone consistently. That is not big, grand gestures that are plastered all over social media. But for me, it is kind of stepping and really stepping up for our future. It's, mundane stuff like getting life insurance policies, planning for the next several decades, having deep discussions about legacy and what that means to me and to us. And I really have, if you couldn't tell, my Venus is in Capricorn. Right. And my husband has a very different placement. His placement is a Venus in the sign of Cancer. And this is a very different expression of love where he immediately goes to nurture through food and making sure what I have on a day-to-day basis. It's picking me up from the airport and keeping the house together while I'm off on adventures, especially for work. And you can see how these two different expressions of love kind of, I don't want to say separate, but they're just inherently different, right? And when I am called to like cook food or act as more of his kind of placement, it's not authentic to me. Like when he's sick and I take on more of his role in the home, it can honestly be draining to me. And of course I do it, right? Because we as people have to eat every day, et cetera, et cetera. But it's really interesting how the energy behind the love just isn't quite as a full expression. It's not as authentic. And it would be the same if he tried to handle our finances or, you know, have big strategy discussions about our life that he kind of kicks off, right? And so I really want to share that because connecting with your Venus placement and understanding where your partner is naturally inclined to show their love is so key in a relationship. And when you're able to do that, it really adds harmony to your life. There's no like questioning of whether or not someone cares for you when you know exactly how they express their love. In addition to Mercury and Venus, I'm also paying a lot of attention to two specific houses in our birth charts, like the fifth house and the seventh house. The reason for this is the fifth house represents creativity and self-expression and the pursuit of hobbies and pleasure. What do you do for fun, right? This house governs the ways in which we really experience and embody joy, pleasure, and entertainment. It also reflects our romantic inclinations and our capacity for love and affection. It can also signify our approach to children. And with the seventh house, it governs our close personal relationships. This includes romantic partnerships, business partnerships, and marriage. It reflects the characteristics and traits you look for in a partner. It shows how you interact and relate to others in close proximity. It also represents the qualities you may project onto others or struggle to embody yourself, which is so key to understanding. It also talks about and indicates the types of individuals you tend to attract, right? And this could have a bit of some karmic implications, some cycles you want to break free of. And that's really, really helpful to know. And so, if you've ever been in a relationship and asked yourself, if I only knew what they were thinking, right? Will we have fun together? What are their thoughts on kids? Like, there's so much information that I just shared in just these four placements that their birth chart will tell you. In addition to this, right, because we've only talked about four placements, they're Venus, Mercury, fifth and seventh houses for both you and them. We were able to uncover and really relate to someone in a profound way, right? Just having a map to how they experience life and with this lens is incredibly helpful. And we've only really hit the surface of what a birth chart tells you. It includes so much more information than just what I've hit on in a couple of minutes. And so, for those of you who are looking to further your connection, but perhaps don't feel like couples therapy is really what you're looking for, right? It's different than that. A couples reading is really where we dive into both charts and let the stars unravel some of the beauty and mystery tension in a relationship. All right, I want to shift gears and talk about the six most surprising things that are covered in a couple's reading. The first one is the patterns you and your partner individually fall into in your relationships, right? And this one can feel a bit vulnerable, but it is so helpful to acknowledge. We hear this in conversations with friends, right? Or maybe we've expressed this ourselves. Oh, I just pick unavailable people. I never know where I stand with someone. I feel like I'm the only one showing up in our relationship, right? These are characteristics of, perhaps incompatibility, but also there could be a disconnect between their values and how they communicate. And so it's really helpful to understand that there are things that can be worked through, and maybe there are things that you choose to not work through. all of that is your choice. I don't want to express that you don't have free will in any capacity. This is simply a tool to help understand kind of what you're getting into on a deeper level. The second most surprising thing is how you express passion and how that relates to how they receive passion and express it themselves, right? So it's really helpful to understand, through your Mars placement, we can uncover a whole host of secrets. How you handle anger. Is their drive more at the beginning of a project, or do they need to finish every project they start? How do they argue? How do you handle when passion moves out of kind of passionate discussion and into passionate disagreement, or even further into fighting and like hardcore tension? Super helpful to know, especially if they have fire elements in, their Mars placement. They might burn little brighter, a little hotter. And if you have a water element, you're naturally going to express them differently, right? Which brings me to my next point, which is proof that they balance you out. One of the most common things I hear when people are talking about their partnerships and relationships are, things like they ground me. I need their calm energy. He lets me fully express my fiery nature. The birth chart shows exactly the elements each person embodies and where they need help to be balanced out. And it's so cool when I'm reading two different charts to see, uh, perhaps person has a lot of fire and air, the other person has a ton of earth energy and maybe some water. And so it's awesome to see how they naturally were drawn to someone that would balance them out because that's exactly what they need in their life. And so it's just beautiful and so cool. The fourth most surprising thing is your wounding in this lifetime. And this can be also a little tender and vulnerable, but I wanted to talk about the placement of the asteroid Chiron. And it actually shows up in your birth chart, right? There are celestial placements that you see within it, and this is one of them. And this is one I do spend quite a bit of time on, both in individual readings and in couples readings, because it reveals your emotional and psychological wounding, right? That tender spot that you're working on throughout this lifetime. And so this is one of those cycles that show up again and again. And so you hope to heal it a little more each time, but it is a wounding in this lifetime for a reason. And so it's really helpful to know the tender parts that your partner has and that you have, so you can really respect that and, not accidentally hit it or hit on that point in a way that's unhelpful for your relationship or causes unnecessary tension for something I don't want to say they can't change, but you can't change your wounding in this lifetime. You work to heal it as much as you can with the time you're given, which is very, very different. The fifth most surprising thing is view of money. So, do they naturally use money to better their day, for their kind of day-to-day life, or do they save for one big trip every few years? And this is beyond being a saver or a spender, right? It's really how do they use the energy of money? Do you think they will agree if you choose to have cleaners come or, have meals delivered? Um, are they someone that doesn't see the value in that? Is this going to be a place where you have quite a lot of tension and so you make decisions to keep your financials very separate overall? With money, ambiguity is the least helpful thing, right? You want to have very clear boundaries, very clear like rules, and this is a lot of my Capricorn placement speaking as well. But like it's really key and important. And I don't think that talking about money happens enough, right? Especially when people talk about like their ability to perhaps grow in their work environment. There's so many elements of a person's life that's tied up to the energy of money, and you want to understand how they view it. Do they see it as energy? Is it a means to an end? Do they not really think about it because it's always been there for them? All of this is incredibly helpful as you're trying to navigate, getting more serious in relationship, planning your life together, commingling finances, perhaps purchasing a house, right? You can just see how any place where you're not really sure of what their views are, how they value it, can just compound communication disasters, challenges, it just creates and builds that tension and perhaps infighting as well. And the sixth most surprising way is through childhood experiences. Through their birth chart, we can actually see how their parents nurtured or perhaps, didn't nurture them. Did they have a lot of support? And maybe your childhood was radically different. And so, when you're trying to express, maybe if you've made the choice to go no contact with some of your family members or, friends, those that had made up kind of your natural support system, they might not be able to relate to that. That's pretty alien to them because it's just not how they've experienced life. Um, and really just having that information, knowing that their worldview is just radically different, doesn't mean they can't accept your reasoning, doesn't mean they can't support you with that decision. It just means you might take a little more time to spend with them to like to share your reasoning, to share how you got there. Um, and be vulnerable in this place. Childhood experiences run the gamut, right? Even if someone had a supportive childhood, 95% of the time, we all have some level of trauma, of wounding, of healing to do from just being born on Earth. And so we want to hold space for that, even if their childhood was much easier than yours, it wasn't perfect. And so really seeing where it wasn't helping them, or perhaps, having very supportive parents made them kind of hindered their emotional intelligence, hindered their growth, it's just really helpful to understand it and view it through that lens. My couple readings and compatibility readings are 90 full minutes. So, what I've highlighted in this episode is really a fraction of what we discuss. I also want to share that, I openly encourage all questions. Nothing is too silly or taboo to ask because it's my great joy in this life to share astrology, especially to those who are new to it and perhaps have some misconceptions about it. Like, let's work through that. When your relationships are in harmony, life is so much easier to manage, right? And when you have a true partner that just gets all facets of you, they don't have to be the same as you, but they understand and validate who you are. It's just so fulfilling and so life enriching. Though the podcast today did focus on romantic relationships, I really encourage business partnership readings, roommate readings, readings for family, right? When your love, money, or your home is involved, astrology really clears up a lot of the what ifs you have. So I wanted to shift gears into our energy report. It feels like the last several weeks since the beginning of March 2025 have felt like almost like a nonstop fireworks show. We are marveling at the destruction. We're anticipating the next firework display. It feels like a lot of ups, like oohs and ahs, ups and downs. There have been a lot of push and pulls between the elements of water and fire as the planets have shifted quite a bit. I do want to highlight some exciting energy that's coming in with the Taurus season. So this kicked off April 20th, 2025, and it brought in some much needed Earth energy. We have the new moon in Taurus Saturday, April 27th, which takes place just one day after the Mercury retrograde shadow fades finally concludes. Like, truly, I'm thrilled for this energy. There's been nonstop retrograde energy in our personal planets, especially with Mercury and Venus. That's really finally starting to unwind. And the reason why this is important is because I wanted to highlight how to work with this new moon energy, right? I love new moon in earth signs, and April is one of my favorite months, so I'm going all out with this new moon. Now, I do say that with a little asterisk. The upcoming lunar cycle has some tension to it. And that's because we are pushed to navigate the friction between our need for stability and security and our desire for transformation and evolution. This is caused by a squaring created by the Sun and Moon in Taurus that's squaring Mars in Leo and Pluto in Aquarius. This energy feels like a placement exam. And no matter your score, you have grown over the last few months. So I need you to hear that and internalize it, right? But what this placement exam does, is it evaluates the level of surrender and perhaps discomfort you can take to reach your next level. So we're looking at, are you ready for level 3? Or is moving from level 1 to level 2 what you need at this time? There are no wrong answers. We're just seeing where you are going to fit, right? And if you struggle to name what specifically you've done over the past 8 weeks, but feel like you've never worked harder, I've experienced the same, right? If I were to list all the things I've done just for my business, let alone the rest of my life, I'd probably get too overwhelmed to finish the list. Time was sped up for March and most of April, and there may be some tension as this Taurus pace comes through. The energy of Taurus is incredibly hardworking. So I expect that we'll be able to embrace less frenzy, less like that fire energy to push everything forward, and have more consistent progress. It's really chipping away at a task bit by bit rather than that procrastination high at 3 a.m. for something that's due in the morning, which has been the energy I feel like we've been in for weeks. And so here is kind of the energy that we're going into. We have this beautiful earth energy. We'll still have some tension as the um, Mercury retrograde finishes out. We still have a little bit of that Venus retrograde post shadow. So the energy lingers a little bit, but it's not punching us in the face. It's not like full on, it's really like we've learned some things, we're integrating, we're unwinding it. And so working with this new moon energy is really a way to just reflect on all that you've accomplished and really what you want to set out to do. Um, within the next few months, what has really unraveled for you in a beautiful way. So I hope you've loved learning what's holding you back from the love you deserve, using the stars to guide your love life. In this episode, we discuss the importance of Venus and Mercury and why I don't use sun signs for compatibility readings. To dive deeper into your relationships and to unravel your cosmic couple identity beyond your sun sign, book a session with me for a couples reading. If you're not in a couple but would like a deep dive, this is also called a compatibility reading, and we can use that time for your birth chart alone, or we can look at the patterns you've seen in relationships, in roommates, in partnerships. My April and May sessions are filling up very quickly as I do limit the number of sessions I do each week. I spend 5 to 7 hours with each birth chart, and that does take some time. So, but the reason I do that is because working with me is transformational, and this will be unlike any other astrology reading you've had. In this month, I've had just profound shifts for clients as they've been working with their transits, with the energy they have, with getting new jobs, with finding new relationships. It's been so beautiful as they really change their life for the better. And so I really ask you to think about where you want profound change in your life, especially in your love life, but in all areas. And let's see how the stars and my guidance can help you. You can book those sessions at musingsandmodalities.com. Thank you so much for watching Musings and Modalities with me, your pragmatic shaman bestie. Tune in the second and fourth Thursdays of each month at 3:30 p.m. Pacific, 6:30 p.m. Eastern for more fabulous episodes. Thank you for listening. You've been listening to Musings and Modalities with me, Tristen, your pragmatic shaman bestie. For more powerful healing tools, join me every second and fourth Thursday at 3:30 p.m. Pacific on Transformation Talk Radio. I cover a variety of topics to meet you wherever you are at on your spiritual journey. Learn techniques to work with pendulums, past life healing, astrology, and more. Please share the show and subscribe for more guidance from your pragmatic shaman bestie at musingsandmodalities.com.